Tyrese had always been careful when walking home from school. He knew the shortcut through the woods was faster, but it was also quiet, filled with shadows from the tall trees that lined the path. That day, the sun was dipping low, casting long streaks of gold across the leaves, and he felt a strange mix of excitement and nervousness as he pushed through the underbrush. He loved the feeling of the cool forest air and the sound of leaves crunching under his shoes, but there was something different today, something he couldn't place. As he rounded a bend in the path, he froze. A dark-colored police car was parked near an old dirt trail that led deeper into the woods. He had seen police cars before, of course, but something about this one made him pause. It wasn't just that it was there. It was the way the officers moved. They seemed tense, looking around as if making sure no one could see them. Tyrese ducked behind a large tree, his heart pounding in his chest. He pressed his back against the rough bark and tried to make himself as small as possible. He didn't want them to notice him. From his hiding spot, he saw two officers get out of the car. One was tall and broad, moving with purpose, while the other was shorter but quicker, glancing around nervously. They carried a black duffel bag from the trunk of the car, holding it carefully between them. Tyrese's curiosity grew, but so did his fear. What were they doing? Why were they here in the middle of the woods acting like this? The officers dropped the bag near an old log and began digging into the ground. They worked quickly, shoving leaves and dirt aside and then placing the bag carefully into the small hole they had dug. Tyrese's stomach twisted. He had never seen anything like this. He wanted to run, to tell someone, but he also wanted to know more. He couldn't take his eyes off the scene. The taller officer looked around one more time, making sure no one was watching, and then they both returned to the car. Tyrese waited until the car was gone, holding his breath until the engine faded into the distance. Then cautiously he stepped out from behind the tree. The forest was silent again, only the rustle of leaves in the wind. He approached the log slowly, glancing over his shoulder to make sure no one was coming. The duffel bag was partially covered by leaves, just as he had seen it. He knelt down, his hands hovering over it. He could see a corner of the bag peeking out of the dirt. He wanted to open it to see what was inside, but a shiver of fear ran through him. What if he got caught? What if it was dangerous? He decided against touching it, but he memorized its location carefully. He would come back, maybe, when he was not so scared. Tyrese walked home faster than usual, his mind racing. Every crack of a branch, every rustle of leaves made him jump. When he got home, he hesitated at the door, waiting to see if his mother was in the kitchen. She was, humming softly as she prepared dinner. Tyrese wanted to tell her everything, but the words stuck in his throat. What if she didn't believe him? What if she told him he was imagining things? He didn't want to get in trouble for being curious. His mother noticed his unusual silence. She looked at him with a gentle but concerned expression, asking if he had a good day at school. Tyrese nodded, forcing a smile, but inside he was restless. He ate his dinner quietly, pushing the food around on his plate without really tasting it. The more he thought about the bag, the more questions he had. What could be in it? Why would the police hide it in the woods instead of taking it somewhere else? After dinner, Tyrese went to his room and sat by the window, staring out at the darkening sky. The forest behind their house seemed peaceful, but his mind kept replaying the image of the officers and the bag. He imagined what could happen if someone found it. He imagined what could happen if the officers came back. He felt small and powerless, but also determined to remember everything he had seen. He tried to focus on his homework, but his thoughts kept drifting back to the woods. Every sound outside made him jump. A car door slamming, a dog barking, the wind through the trees. He felt like he was carrying a secret that was too big for someone his age, a secret that could change everything if it got out. That night he lay in bed, staring at the ceiling. His mother came in to check on him, tucking the blanket around his shoulders and giving him a gentle kiss on the forehead. She asked if he was okay, and he nodded again, but the words didn't come. He couldn't tell her about what he saw yet. He needed time to think, to understand it himself. The next morning, Tyrese woke up with the same uneasy feeling. The memory of the bag was still fresh in his mind, and he knew he couldn't ignore it. He got dressed quickly and ate breakfast without speaking much. His mother noticed his distracted behavior but decided not to press him. She had learned that sometimes it was better to give him space and let him come forward when he was ready. At school, Tyrese found it hard to concentrate. He kept staring out the window during class. thinking about the bag and the officers. During lunch, he told his best friend Malik about what he saw, hoping someone would believe him. Malik listened, but he laughed it off, teasing Tyrese for letting his imagination run wild. Tyrese felt a pang of disappointment. He had hoped for support, but instead he felt more alone than ever. After school, he walked back through the usual route, still thinking about the bag. He resisted the urge to run into the woods, though a part of him wanted to check if it was still there. He promised himself he would be careful, but the curiosity gnawed at him. He had never been so aware of his surroundings, noticing every sound, every shadow, every movement of people around him. When he got home again, he sat quietly in the living room while his mother folded laundry. He watched her work, the simple movements of her hands calming him slightly. He wanted to tell her everything now, but he was still scared. He didn't know what could happen if the wrong people found out he had seen the bag. As the evening wore on, Tyrese began to make a plan. He would have to be smart, careful, and patient. He would have to remember every detail: the color of the car, the clothes of the officers, the exact location of the bag. He felt a strange mix of fear and determination. He knew that even though he was just a boy, he had seen something important, something that could not be ignored. Before going to bed, he wrote down what he remembered in a small notebook he kept hidden under his bed. Every movement, every glance, every word the officers had said to each other was carefully noted. It made him feel a little better, as if he was taking control of a situation that felt too big for him. He knew that one day he might have to do something with this information, but for now recording it was enough. That night, as he lay in bed, he imagined what could happen next. He imagined the officers coming back, the bag being discovered, someone else finding it first. He felt a knot of anxiety in his stomach, but also a spark of courage. He knew that even though he was scared, he couldn't ignore what he had seen. He had to be careful, but he also had to pay attention. His mother peeked in one last time before turning off the light. Tyrese whispered a quiet goodnight, and she smiled, unaware of the secret he carried. Tyrese closed his eyes, trying to fall asleep. But the images of the forest and the officers stayed in his mind. He knew that tomorrow, and the days after, things would feel different. He felt like he had crossed into a world where he had to be more alert, more aware, and more brave than ever before. Tyrese finally drifted into a restless sleep, dreaming of the woods, the hidden bag, and the questions that had no answers yet. He didn't know what the future held, but he knew one thing for sure. What he had seen could not be ignored, and he had to find a way to face it, even if it scared him. He was just a boy, but in that moment he felt the weight of something much bigger than himself, pressing down on his shoulders, and though he was scared, he also felt a small, stubborn flame of courage flickering inside him, ready to guide him through whatever came next. Tyrese couldn't stop thinking about the bag in the woods. Every moment of the day, whether in class, at lunch, or walking home, his mind wandered back to it. The images of the officers digging and covering the bag played in his head like a movie he couldn't pause. He wanted to tell someone, but fear made him hesitate. He knew he was just a boy, and what if no one believed him? What if telling someone brought trouble? During lunch at school, he finally mentioned it to his best friend, Malik. Malik's eyes widened for a second, but then he laughed and shook his head. He teased Tyrese, saying it sounded like a story from a movie. Tyrese felt a pang of disappointment. He had hoped Malik would understand, maybe even be curious with him. But instead, Malik's laughter made him feel more alone. He decided he would keep this secret to himself, at least for now. After school, Tyrese walked the familiar path home, his steps slower this time. His heart was pounding with both fear and excitement. He wanted to go back to the woods to see if the bag was still there, but he knew he had to be careful. He looked around constantly, checking if anyone was following him. The trees were quiet, the wind gently rustling the leaves, and the shadows stretched longer as the sun dipped lower in the sky. When he reached the spot where the bag had been buried, he froze. The black duffel bag was still partially covered by leaves. His curiosity overpowered his fear. He crouched down and carefully pulled away some leaves. The bag felt firm and heavy under his fingers. He could see a small tear near the zipper. He couldn't resist anymore. He slowly unzipped it just a little to peek inside. His eyes widened. There were bundles of cash and several sealed envelopes. Tyrese's mind raced. What could be in those envelopes? Why would the police hide this in the woods? Suddenly, he heard a noise behind him. A car door slammed and his heart jumped. He ducked behind a tree, barely breathing. One of the officers from the day before appeared, walking carefully, looking around suspiciously. Tyrese stayed perfectly still, his eyes fixed on the officer. After a few tense minutes, the officer seemed satisfied that no one was there and left. Tyrese waited a long time before he moved, his hands trembling. He knew now more than ever that he had to be careful. That night, he sat at the kitchen table with his mother. She was preparing dinner, humming softly, and Tyrese fidgeted with his hands. Finally, he decided to tell her everything. He described the police car, the officers, and the bag. At first, she didn't believe him. She thought he might have misunderstood or imagined parts of it. But when he told her the car's license plate number, her face changed. Fear flashed in her eyes. She realized he was telling the truth. She hugged him tightly and warned him never to go near the woods again. She promised she would handle things carefully, but Tyrese could see the worry in her face. The next day at school, Tyrese's mind was elsewhere. He kept thinking about the bag, the officers, and what might happen if anyone discovered that he had seen it. He wanted to focus on lessons, but he couldn't. Even when his teacher called on him, his mind drifted. After classes ended, he decided to go home a different way, avoiding the woods. He wanted to follow his mother's advice, but the memory of the bag tugged at him relentlessly. After school, at home, his mother seemed more tense than usual. She was pacing the kitchen while preparing food, her eyes occasionally glancing out the window. Tyrese felt a mix of relief and worry. Relief that she believed him, worry that this was bigger than he understood. He stayed quiet, trying to be calm, but inside he felt restless. He wanted to do something, anything, to understand what was happening. In the following days, Tyrese observed everything around him. He noticed a car parked near the end of his street that he hadn't seen before. It was unmarked, with tinted windows. He saw someone inside watching the street. He didn't know who it was, but it reminded him of the officer in the woods. His mother noticed him glancing frequently at the window. She suggested he stay inside more and avoid unnecessary trips outside. Tyrese obeyed, but his curiosity gnawed at him. He felt the need to know what was happening with the bag, but he also understood the danger. He tried to focus on his homework and schoolwork, but every sound outside made him jump. A car engine, the bark of a dog, footsteps on the sidewalk. He couldn't shake the feeling that something bigger was at play, something dangerous. He began to write down details of what he remembered, the way the officers acted, the location of the bag, even small details like the color of their jackets. Writing it down gave him a sense of control, as if organizing the facts could somehow protect him. One evening, he decided to peek at the woods from a safe distance. He hid behind a tree line and scanned the area. Everything looked quiet, peaceful almost, but he knew better. He could almost see the bag hidden under leaves, and he imagined the officers returning to check on it. Tyrese felt a mix of fear and determination. He was just a boy, but he had seen something important and he couldn't ignore it. The days passed, each one filled with tension. Tyrese's mother spoke with him quietly about safety and caution. She reminded him not to go near the woods, to stay away from strangers, and to be careful about who he trusted. Tyrese understood, but he also felt a growing responsibility. He knew that he had seen something that could have serious consequences. He felt small and powerless in one sense, but in another, he felt a strange sense of purpose. He began thinking about what to do next. Should he tell someone else? Should he try to find out more about the bag on his own? He felt torn. He knew the right thing might be scary, but he couldn't ignore the truth. Writing down every detail seemed like the safest way to start, and it helped him organize his thoughts. Every time he looked at the pages of his notebook, he felt a little stronger, more prepared. One afternoon, his mother called someone she trusted, a local journalist who had reported on police misconduct in the past. She didn't give any names, but explained that her son had seen suspicious activity in the woods. Tyrese felt nervous. He had never interacted with journalists before, and the idea that someone else knew about the bag both excited and frightened him. The journalist promised to look into it carefully and to be discreet. Tyrese's mother thanked them and told Tyrese that sometimes the truth needed careful handling. Tyrese spent the next few days watching the woods from a distance, noticing patterns, when cars came and went, when people walked by, and if there were any signs of the bag being touched. His senses sharpened, and even though he was scared, he felt more aware and alert than ever. He realized that being observant could protect him and maybe help uncover the truth. At night, he wrote more notes detailing every observation and thought. He thought about what could happen if the officers discovered he had seen the bag. The thought made him anxious, but he also felt a quiet courage. He was just a boy, but he was paying attention, learning, and preparing for what might come next. Tyrese's mother noticed his determination. She understood that he was growing up quickly, facing a situation that most adults would find difficult. She encouraged him to stay safe, but she also acknowledged his bravery. She explained that doing the right thing wasn't always easy, and sometimes it required courage and patience. Tyrese listened, feeling both proud and nervous. Every day, the memory of the officers and the bag lingered. Tyrese felt a mix of fear, curiosity, and responsibility. He knew the path ahead would not be simple, but he also understood that he had already taken the first steps. He had seen the truth and had chosen to be aware. He didn't know what the next day would bring, but he knew he had to be ready, careful, and brave. As he lay in bed at night, he imagined the woods, the hidden bag, and the officers returning. He felt a knot of tension in his stomach, but also a spark of determination. He knew that he had a story to uncover, and that even though he was young, he could play a part in revealing the truth. Tyrese drifted off to sleep with his notebook by his side, the pages filled with details and observations that would guide him in the days to come. He didn't yet know what would happen next, but he understood that he was no longer just a boy walking home from school. He was someone who had seen something important, and he had a responsibility to face it carefully. Tyrese could feel the tension building each day. He stayed close to home, avoiding the woods as his mother had warned. But he couldn't stop thinking about what he had seen. The bag, the cash, the officers. It all lingered in his mind like a heavy weight. He kept writing in his notebook, detailing every moment, every sound, every glance he remembered. It made him feel like he was doing something to stay safe while also holding on to the truth. His mother had contacted the journalist, and Tyrese could sense a change in the air. People were quieter around their house, and his mother seemed more vigilant, constantly checking the windows and locks. Tyrese noticed a few unfamiliar cars parked at the end of their street, the windows darkened and the engines off. He didn't know if they were connected to what he had seen, but it made him more alert. Every day felt like walking on a thin line, unsure of what could happen next. One afternoon, while Tyrese was looking out the window, he saw an unmarked car slowly driving past their home. The car stopped for a moment, and someone inside glanced in their direction. Tyrese's stomach twisted with fear. He quickly moved away from the window, trying not to be noticed. His mother, sensing his unease, came over and placed her hand on his shoulder. She reminded him to stay calm and reassured him that they were taking precautions to keep him safe. Still, the tension in the house was palpable, and Tyrese could feel it pressing on him. The journalist called his mother that evening. They spoke quietly in the kitchen, and Tyrese listened from the doorway. He caught snippets of the conversation, questions about police activity, missing money, and suspicious behavior. The journalist promised to investigate carefully and keep their identities safe. Tyrese felt a mix of relief and nervousness. He knew that someone outside their family was now aware of what he had seen, and that gave him hope. But it also made the situation feel more real and serious. Over the next few days, Tyrese observed the woods from a distance. He noted patterns and when people came and went, when vehicles appeared, and any unusual movements. He became highly alert to every sound, every shadow, the birds in the trees, the rustling of leaves. Even the distant sound of footsteps became significant. He felt like he was living in a world where nothing could be taken for granted. The bag, the officers, and the potential danger were constantly in his mind. One evening, while Tyrese and his mother were having dinner, he noticed a man walking by the house, glancing toward the windows. His mother immediately noticed and gestured for him to stay inside. She explained that sometimes people with bad intentions would watch, waiting for the right moment. Tyrese understood the danger, and for the first time he truly felt how serious the situation had become. It wasn't just curiosity or adventure anymore. It was something that could affect their safety. The journalist began digging into recent reports about missing confiscated money from the police station. Tyrese's mother shared what her son had observed without giving away their names. The journalist was intrigued and promised to look into it. Tyrese felt a sense of pride mixed with anxiety. He was only a boy, but his observations were helping uncover something significant. He felt important but also very aware of the potential risks. That night, Tyrese couldn't sleep. He lay in bed, thinking about the officers, the bag, and the journalist's promise to investigate. He thought about what might happen if the wrong people found out that he had seen the bag. Fear gripped him, but he also felt a sense of responsibility. He had seen something important and he knew that ignoring it would not be right. He tightened his grip on his notebook, feeling the comfort of having a record of everything he had seen. In the following days, Tyrese's mother became even more protective. She instructed him to avoid certain areas, to be careful when leaving the house, and to pay attention to anything unusual. Tyrese followed her advice, but he also continued to observe quietly, from safe distances, the areas around the woods and their neighborhood. He felt like a small detective, noticing details that most people would miss. Every shadow, every vehicle, every movement became a clue. One afternoon, while observing from a hidden spot near the edge of the woods, Tyrese saw movement. 2 officers appeared, digging at the spot where he had seen the bag before. They moved cautiously, unaware that they were being watched. Tyrese's heart raced. He stayed hidden, watching every motion, memorizing details for the journalist. He knew that capturing this information was important, but he also knew he had to be careful. If they saw him, the consequences could be serious. Tyrese returned home quickly, his mind buzzing with what he had seen. He told his mother carefully about the officer's return, omitting unnecessary details to avoid panic, but making sure she understood the urgency. His mother listened, her face serious, realizing that the situation was growing more dangerous. She decided it was time to take further steps to ensure their safety. Tyrese felt a mix of fear and relief. Fear because of the danger, relief because he wasn't facing it alone. The journalist arranged to meet a contact at the police station to discreetly gather information. Tyrese and his mother continued to observe, taking precautions at home and avoiding unnecessary exposure. Tyrese felt like a part of something bigger than himself, but he also felt the weight of the responsibility on his young shoulders. He couldn't afford mistakes, and every choice he made now could have consequences. One evening, as Tyrese was looking out the window, he noticed unusual activity near the station. Cars parked in odd positions, officers moving quickly and carefully, and the kind of tension that indicated something important was happening. He quickly jotted down notes in his notebook, making sure to record every detail for the journalist. He felt like he was piecing together a puzzle, each observation a small part of a much larger picture. Tyrese's mother began to talk to him about courage and patience. She explained that sometimes doing the right thing meant waiting, observing, and being careful. Tyrese listened, feeling the truth in her words. He understood that his role wasn't to confront or act recklessly, but to gather information and stay safe. The knowledge he had was powerful, and he had to handle it wisely. At night, Tyrese continued writing, recording every observation, every thought, and every emotion. The notebook had become his lifeline, a place to organize what he knew and prepare for what might come next. He realized that even though he was young, he had already taken steps that many adults might hesitate to take. He felt a sense of purpose, knowing that his attention and careful observation could help uncover something significant. Days passed with a careful rhythm. Tyrese watched, noted, and waited. He became more aware of the world around him, noticing details that others overlooked. Even the smallest things, a car parked slightly off, the direction of footsteps, the expression on someone's face, mattered. He understood that he was in a delicate situation, and he needed to be alert at all times. One morning, Tyrese's mother received a call from the journalist with important news. They had discovered discrepancies in the records of confiscated money from the police station. Tyrese felt a surge of both anxiety and hope. The investigation was moving forward, and the information he had provided played a part. He felt proud but also cautious. The danger wasn't gone, but they were making progress. Tyrese spent the day reflecting on everything he had learned. He realized that courage wasn't the absence of fear. It was moving forward despite it. He thought about the officers, the hidden bag, and the steps he had taken to protect himself and his family. He felt a quiet confidence growing inside him. Even though he was just a boy, He understood that his careful observation, patience, and bravery could make a difference. That night, as he lay in bed, Therese thought about the future. He didn't know what would happen next, but he felt ready to face it. The journal entries he had made, the observations he had recorded, and the support of his mother and the journalist gave him strength. He understood that truth could be hidden, but it could also be uncovered with patience, courage, and careful attention. Tyrese closed his notebook and placed it under his pillow. The images of the officers, the bag, and the woods lingered in his mind, but they no longer made him feel helpless. Instead, he felt a quiet determination. He knew that the days ahead would require vigilance, wisdom, and courage, but he was ready. He was no longer just a boy who had walked home from school. He was someone who had seen something important and had taken the first steps to bring the truth to light. With that thought, he finally drifted into a deep, thoughtful sleep, ready for whatever the next day would bring. Tyrese felt a mixture of fear and hope as the days passed. The journalist had been discreet but persistent, asking questions and gathering information about the missing money and suspicious police activity. Tyrese's mother made sure their family stayed safe, keeping a close eye on the house and limiting his trips outside. Despite the precautions, Tyrese's curiosity and sense of responsibility never faded. He wanted to know what was happening with the bag and whether justice would be served. One afternoon, Tyrese and his mother watched from their window as several unmarked cars quietly arrived near the woods. The officers they had seen before appeared, moving cautiously and checking the surroundings. Tyrese's heart raced, but he stayed behind the curtains, notebook in hand. He observed every movement, memorizing details that could help the journalist and authorities. He realized that what he had seen weeks ago was now part of a larger investigation, and the weight of that realization both excited and frightened him. The journalist arranged for an undercover team to monitor the area. Hidden cameras were set up to capture any activity near the spot where the bag had been buried. Tyrese's mother explained to him that the team was there to gather evidence safely and legally. Tyrese felt a sense of relief knowing that professionals were involved, but he also understood that the danger was still real. He stayed close to home, careful not to draw attention to himself. That night, Tyrese lay in bed thinking about the officers. He imagined them returning to the woods, unaware that they were being watched and recorded. The thought made his stomach twist, but it also gave him hope. He knew that the evidence being collected could finally expose the truth. He couldn't help but feel a sense of pride that his observation had played a small part in uncovering something important. Over the next few days, Tyrese continued to document anything unusual. He noticed patterns in the officers' movements and the timing of the cars near the area. His observations, combined with the hidden cameras, created a detailed record that could not be ignored. Tyrese's mother encouraged him to stay cautious and reminded him that his safety was the most important thing. Tyrese listened, understanding that being careful did not mean he was not brave. In fact, it took courage to be patient and observant. One evening, while Tyrese was looking out the window, he noticed two officers digging near the old log. They worked carefully, unaware of the hidden cameras recording every movement. Tyrese held his breath, making sure to stay completely hidden. His heart pounded as he watched, knowing that the footage would be critical. The officers eventually finished their work and left, still unaware that their actions had been captured. Tyrese felt a sense of relief and anticipation. He knew that the evidence could finally bring the truth to light. The following day, Tyrese's mother received a call from the journalist. They had reviewed the footage and confirmed that the officers were involved in illegal activity. Tyrese felt a rush of excitement and anxiety. The investigation was progressing, and the truth was beginning to emerge. He felt proud that his careful observation had helped uncover something significant, but he also knew that the situation was far from over. Over the next week, internal affairs moved quickly. The officers involved were quietly arrested before they could flee or destroy evidence. Tyrese and his mother watched the news cautiously, knowing that the story would soon become public. The town would be shocked, and Tyrese felt a mixture of relief and apprehension. He knew that the danger had passed, but the impact of what had happened would be felt by many. The journalist reached out to Tyrese's mother, praising Tyrese's courage and careful observation. They assured her that their identities would remain confidential, protecting them from any unwanted attention. Tyrese felt a sense of validation. He had been brave, patient, and careful, and it had made a difference. The realization that his actions had contributed to justice gave him a quiet pride that he carried with him throughout the day. Life slowly returned to normal. Tyrese could walk home from school without fear, and the neighborhood felt safer. He continued to write in his notebook, though now it was more about his thoughts and reflections than observations of danger. He had learned valuable lessons about courage, responsibility, and the importance of doing the right thing even when it was difficult. His mother praised him for his bravery, reminding him that standing up for what is right is not always easy, but it is always important. Tyrese began to share his experiences in subtle ways with his friends, emphasizing the importance of being observant and aware. He spoke about courage, patience, and responsibility, teaching lessons without revealing details that could compromise the investigation. His friends listened, inspired by his insight and maturity. Tyrese realized that even though he was young, he had grown in ways that many adults might not experience. He had faced fear, observed carefully, and contributed to uncovering the truth. The town slowly processed the news of the arrests. The corrupt officers were publicly charged, and the police department promised reforms. Tyrese and his mother followed the story closely, feeling satisfaction that justice had been served. They remained cautious, but the tension that had gripped their lives for weeks began to ease. Tyrese felt a sense of relief and accomplishment, knowing that his actions, even as a young boy, had made a difference. One evening, Tyrese returned to the edge of the woods, standing quietly and reflecting on everything that had happened. The trees were still, the air calm, and the spot where the bag had been buried now seemed peaceful. He thought about how fear and courage had coexisted in his heart, and how patience and careful observation had guided him through a dangerous situation. He felt a quiet strength, knowing that he had faced something difficult and had done the right thing. Tyrese's mother joined him, placing a hand on his shoulder. She smiled and told him how proud she was of his bravery and wisdom. She reminded him that courage is not the absence of fear, but the ability to act despite it. Tyrese nodded, feeling the truth in her words. He had grown in ways he hadn't imagined, learning lessons about life, responsibility, and the importance of standing up for what is right. The days that followed were calmer. Tyrese continued his daily routines, walking to school and spending time with friends, but he carried the lessons he had learned with him. He remained observant and aware, understanding that life could present challenges at any moment, but he also felt confident in his ability to face them with courage and careful thought. Tyrese kept writing in his notebook, recording reflections and insights rather than observations of danger. The notebook had become a symbol of his growth, a place where he could organize his thoughts and remember the lessons he had learned. He felt grateful for the support of his mother and the journalist, understanding that bravery often requires guidance and encouragement. As the town moved forward, the story of the corrupt officers became a cautionary tale, reminding people of the importance of honesty, integrity, and accountability. Tyrese felt a quiet pride knowing that he had played a role, even if small, in bringing justice to his community. He understood that courage and responsibility are qualities that can grow in anyone, regardless of age. Tyrese looked forward to the future with hope and confidence. He knew that challenges would come, but he also knew that he had faced fear, acted wisely, and contributed to something important. The experience had shaped him, teaching him lessons that would guide him for years to come. He felt ready to face life with awareness, courage, and a sense of responsibility, knowing that even small actions can have a big impact. That night, as Tyrese lay in bed, he thought about the journey he had been on, the fear, the observation, the careful planning, and the eventual uncovering of the truth. He felt a sense of peace and accomplishment, knowing that he had done the right thing and had helped bring justice to his town. With that thought, he drifted into a deep, calm sleep, confident in his ability to face whatever the future might hold.